Hi, I'm Eileen and this is another movement education video, and this is part 2 of a topic called neck pain while walking. And if you didn't watch part 1, please make sure you do, because that taught about a body part that you probably would never guess would have anything to do with your neck when you're walking, but it can. It can impact it really, really crazily. So please watch part 1 if you haven't. Now this is part 2, and I'm going to talk about another body part that can really impact the neck. Actually, whether you're walking, sitting, sleeping, I mean, almost anything. It also can impact your low back, your hips, your shoulders, not just your neck. It's what I would call the monkey in the middle. Now, I just taught a class to my Move Without Pain Academy on monkey in the middle, and we did a beautiful mobility class, a long mobility sequence, which is way beyond the scope of this brief education video. But I'm going to do my best to teach you a couple of movements that may really help you so that you cannot have neck pain when you're walking if your thoracic spine is part of it. Now, your thoracic spine might also be causing pain no matter what, anywhere in your body. So this is a good thing to learn no matter what's going on. So here we go. Your thoracic spine, or your trunk, is in between your neck and your low back, right? Your ribs are attached to your thoracic spine, your ribs 1 through 12. You have 12 vertebrae in your thoracic spine. And your thoracic spine, because it's in between your neck and your low back, and it's in between your shoulders and your hips, has a real impact on all those body parts if it's not working correctly or properly or optimally. Your thoracic spine needs to be fully mobile in all 3 planes of motion, which is bending forward and back, side to side, and turning, so that above and below is not stressed or strained more than it's supposed to be when you're living life or performing sports activities or working hard at your job or on a project or gardening or anything that's what you love to do. Okay, you really want that thoracic spine to be functioning properly. So I'm going to show you how you can kind of assess it. Now, this is, I don't know what's going on with in your world, so make sure you don't do any movements that you should not do. But I do want you to understand that when you bend forward, if you bend forward at the hips, that's testing, can your hips load, right? Well, your hamstrings load and your power source back there are load to keep you from falling on your face. If you kind of put one foot in front of the other with a little bit of a wide stance so that the hips have a little less movement, you can kind of see what's happening with your low back when you bend forward. But we want to know what's happening with the thoracic spine. So a great way to do that is to cross your arms and see, can you kind of tuck your elbows into the front of your body, right? So you can see it's not a big motion. I'm tucking and I'm kind of trying to hunch my upper back. Now, sometimes you can have a really big curve in the upper back, which would be a kyphotic curve, and that's if it's excessive. It is supposed to curve out in the thoracic spine. The neck curves in, the lumbar spine curves in, and the sacrum, or the pelvis, curves out, right, where your tailbone's at the bottom. So it is supposed to curve out, but we want it to curve out in a way that's healthy, not excessive and not flattened. Okay, I think about 40 degrees is a nice healthy curve in the thoracic spine. Some people, if you do a lot of this, sitting at a desk, guess what? You're probably starting to get a hump back, that, dowager's hump that none of us want to get as we get older, right? And you don't want to be all stiff and flattened up there and nothing moves because it's, it's stiff. So it's really important that you assess that part of the body and see what's going on. So we're going to hunch forward a little and see if that gets a nice flexion in there. And we can also lift up. Now, when I do this, you can see I'm not just bending backward, right? It's not about what's happening in the whole spine and the lumbar spine and the hips. It's about what's happening with the thoracic spine. So can I lift my chest up, and then lean my head and shoulders backward. Do I have good extension in the thoracic spine? And some of you might actually think you've got shoulder issues if your shoulder only goes so far. But guess what? Once my shoulder hits here, guess what has to happen in order for me to get full extension? My thoracic spine needs to extend so that I can go further with that shoulder. So some of you may be, experiencing some therapy, and you might be told you've got to stretch that shoulder. You've got to stretch that shoulder. But if your thoracic spine is stuck in the upper part, that shoulder's not going to go anywhere. The thoracic spine needs to be mobilized. So if you are getting therapy, enlighten your therapist if they're not aware of that particular fact. Okay? All right, now, let's get back to thoracic spine assessment. So that's forward and back, and then you want to assess it side to side. So the goal is to kind of, it's the shoulders. You don't want to be earrings, right? But you want to see, can I side bend without my hips going all over the place, because that's going to pull in the, lower body. So we kind of want to see what's happening. Can I it's almost like my ribs are sort of going sideways that way as my shoulder comes down, and then the same the other way. So let me show you in the back. Let me see if I can you can see here. So you really kind of want your shoulders to go side to side, and you want to see what's happening, right? And then we want to rotate. So as I rotate, the goal here is to not have everything turn, because that, now we're getting hip rotation involved. We want to see what's happening with my thoracic spine. How far can I rotate? And if you think about it in the front, if I'm trying to bring my shoulder under my chin, right, that's going to give me pretty good rotation in that thoracic spine as my chin stays forward. And that will also keep you from annoying your neck, because if your neck doesn't like to turn, right, that's going to kind of mess up your assessment. You won't really know what's going on. So hopefully that's helpful, and you've just seen, oh my goodness, my thoracic spine really isn't very mobile. Or maybe, wow, it doesn't turn left, or it doesn't side bend very well, or wow, I can't extend it all with my thoracic spine. So now the assessment sort of becomes the movement that you're going to do, and it can be really, really helpful. But you can try it in sitting. Some people find that if you do it in sitting, it's easier, because now you've got the lower body out of the way and it can't even cheat. So you can do this in sitting or in standing. I'm going to show you in sitting. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you coming down. So the goal is I'm going to come down. So see how I'm trying to bring my elbows into my stomach? I'm not trying to bend forward, right? That's hips and low back. What I want to do is this. I want to kind of bring my elbows into my belly, right? Without bending forward, right? I'm kind of crunching. And then the opposite is lifting the ribs up and then going back with the shoulders. So the goal is lift up and go back with the shoulders. Now you can see, again, I'm not doing this, right? I'm not using my lower body and my hips. I'm lifting up, and the shoulders go back, almost like you want to try to tap your shoulders on something. And if you keep your eyes fixed, your neck kind of stays out of it, and you're actually mobilizing your neck from below. And that's a little complicated to explain, but to put it simply is, if I'm moving my thoracic spine up and back, it's extending. But if I keep my eyes fixed, my neck is actually flexing. So if I come back to straight without letting my neck move, you can see I'm looking down. So I've actually, because I've moved this with my eyes fixed, my neck is actually doing a motion, but it's in response to the motion below instead of actively doing this. And so in a response to that, it's being mobilized from below, and it can really ease neck issues. I've had people that this has really helped. Now I'll explain when I'm done showing you the movements. how this can directly impact from your walking. Okay, so we also want to do side to side, and I guess I got to show you front from that. So side to side, just like what we did in the assessment from standing, right? I'm kind of trying to shift my ribs over a little bit as I do this. Okay, so you're getting that nice side bending in the thoracic spine. Yes, I can do this as well, and I can try to tip over. And again, if you keep your eyes fixed, you're going to mobilize your neck from below, because your neck is going to respond to the movement without initiating or creating the movement, right? But if that bothers your hips, or if that feels too hard, trying to shift this way might be easier for you. Okay, you might get more out of it. And then we want the rotation, and just like I said when I was standing, if you try to get the shoulder under the chin, right? And you can work on one part at a time. You don't have to go, you know, rotation that way, rotation that way. You can just work on rotation this way and do your reps, and then rotation this way, or you can combine them. Same thing with sideways, right? I can just do one motion, which makes it at least a little easier sometimes for your brain to navigate versus going back and forth, especially if there's restriction. And same thing with going forward and back. You can combine them, or you can keep them separate. Now, when you've done all that, you can stand back up, reassess, and see. But let me finish by explaining how this can help with if you have neck pain when you're walking, or pain anywhere when you're walking. So when you're walking, and I have other videos where I've explained what happens from the ground up and how important ankle function is, subtalar joint, all that stuff. I'm not going to go into any of that. What I am going to say is your trunk needs to rotate when you walk. And there are some experts who actually will tell you that the trunk rotating is actually what swings the legs forward. Okay. Now, I believe that it's all a combined effort. I do know, I will share a real quick story. I had a patient who had multiple sclerosis, and she literally had no muscle power from like here down, and so she could not walk. But she wore this very special brace system that was built for her. It was really meant for pediatrics, for children, young kids, but they built a bigger one for her because she was a perfect candidate to try it. And I'm not sure how all that came about, but I know it did. So she had this brace system where her knees couldn't bend, so they couldn't collapse, and it went up into her trunk. And when she rotated her trunk, which she could do, the brace system would bring her feet forward so she could walk, right? And she could use that system so well, she could actually go up and down stairs in it. So that, you know, that trunk rotation can swing a leg forward, but of course she was in a brace system, okay? So all of that to say, obviously I can swing my leg forward with no trunk rotation whatsoever. However, when I do swing this leg forward, you're not seeing this because it's happening on a very minute level. My pelvis is rotating, and relatively speaking, my trunk is rotating the opposite direction. So we do get that rotation. So when you're walking, when I go to swing a leg forward, ideally the opposite arm is coming forward, right? And I'm going to exaggerate this. So we do that, 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 that. I'm exaggerating it so you can see the rotation that's happening. So if you're somebody who the trunk is not really working real well, now also that rotation that happens to the opposite, we've also got side bending that happens. This hip is loading on the outside to keep me from falling over, but I am still getting a small amount of side bending. And you'll notice some people when they walk, they do more side bending, right? Some people when they walk, they do more rotation, right? And obviously flexion and extension forward and back is always happening. Now, because you can see that in people, you know that that happens when we walk. all three planes of motion are being used, are being accessed in the body. What if the body doesn't have it? What if the thoracic spine doesn't have side bending to one side or both? What if it doesn't have rotation to one side or both? What if it doesn't like to flex or extend? It's going to impact your walking, and it's going to impact your neck. Okay? So you really want, check out your T-spine, mobilize your T-spine, and leave some comments below and let me know, did this really help you? I'd like to hear that these videos are working to help you to move without pain so you can age without decline and have lifelong well-being. All right? Thinking about doing a part 3 on this particular topic because there's one other body part that can kind of affect neck when you're walking and everything else. So I may do that the next time. All right. I hope to see you next time. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe.